think for us to get to better work on social, I would encourage agencies and brands, when they have their own brand personality in the real world, be braver when it comes to social and give your brand an entirely new personality. And it can be funnier, it can be riskier, because both personalities need to be different and tweaked for them to be successful on those platforms.
Welcome back to Created for Creatives, the podcast where creatives talk about, creative. I'm Merlee Jayme, your host for this episode, coming to you from the jury rooms of the London International Awards in Las Vegas. And I'm talking pharma and medical with Laura Florence, the Executive Creative Director of Havas Health & You in Sao Paulo. And Tara McKenty, the Chief Innovation Officer and Co-Executive Creative Director at BMF in Sydney, who is on the digital and social media and influencer jury. Tara's original end goal was to get into the coolest agency, Saatchi & Saatchi. Funny how she got there.
I started off doing a graphic design degree, majored in advertising, and then I had this big grand plan on how to get an internship at Saatchi & Saatchi, which was the most desirable agency way back when. Had all of these elaborate plans to get the ECD's attention, and then it turns out the wakeboard and snowboard store I worked in, one of my regulars was a designer at Saatchi & Saatchi, so I got the intern through that. So it's just incredibly lucky to get in, and that's what I want to change for our industry. Is it shouldn't be a fluke or a luck of chance on how you get your first opportunity. We need to make those pathways for junior talent much clearer.
That's good for the youngsters to hear.
Great point.
Laura, what about you? How'd you get into this industry?
It was a long time ago, 30 years ago, and I started because my father knows a person inside an agency, so he asked me to stay there, and I think it's a privilege. No one has this privilege. I did a good work, so I stayed, but I don't think it's fair that you have to have connections in the beginning to start.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's fair to have connections to be in the leadership too. Yeah. So in our whole history, we have to have connections to go to one point to another point. So that's why I'm fighting for that. We need like same opportunity for everybody.
Laura, I think we're going to get along just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a reason why you two are here. Okay. Let's shift on our other side of us. I'm also so humbled to be here and honored because on my own, I also have one part of the creativity, which we do work for our clients, and the other side is where our passion lies. So I do have the Misfits camp, and it's all about bridging neurodivergent creatives to possible job opportunities in our creative industry. It's hard because they do have different kinds and different levels, right? I thought it would be easy. It's not, but little steps will get there. Now, you touched on this about more girls. I really want to know more about this, how it came about, what sparked the passion.
Yeah, so 5 years ago, we started this initiative when I was in a point that I was in a very nice leadership with a lot of privilege, and I'm trying to do the difference with my team, and I think this is so little. We have to do more, and you have to use my privilege to change the industry. So I try in my network. It was not fast the way that I went, so I create this initiative to make things change faster. At the point that I'm a very privileged woman in the leadership, and I have the responsibility to do something with all this networking and power and thing they gave to me. So that's why I trying to make privileged people to understand their role in the transformation.
My gosh, that's so magnanimous of you, actually. Back in 2017, Tara, you came up with Rare. What's the story behind Rare?
So Rare was founded out of the frustration that a friend of mine who is also a creative, who's now at Meta, a female creative director from Australia, Steph Giavincenzo, noticed that people like us and female creative directors were dropping out of our industry and going to different industries. And 20 years ago, 75% of creative jobs used to be in advertising, and now only 50%. Because tech companies, startups, clients are hiring creatives. And what that means is that creatives have more choice, and they can go to newer industries which have less of a legacy, which are more inclusive. So the environment's better. And when you're a female creative, whether you want to start a family, whether you're feeling burnt out, like all of these reasons are reasons to leave. And so Rare really was designed to try and keep that great talent in our industry so we could continue to progress as an industry. So Rare consists of 3 things. It's really designed to help get underrepresented talent industry trained. So we did that by sponsoring D&AD Shift, which is a school that trains underrepresented creative talents from different industries for free, which has a 70% rate of hiring post the school. So they were in New York and London, and then we helped launch them in, I think the last school was São Paulo, but then we did Berlin and Sydney. We also, with Rare, had a global fellowship where we placed 20 underrepresented creatives in 5 different creative teams. We actually have one of those fellows here at Liaisons, John, who was part of the program, who's at Creative Labs New York. And so that was to solve getting underrepresented talent in the clear pathway. Yeah. And then finally, to help retain diverse talent and get them into leadership positions, we had the Leadership Academy, which was in 9 markets globally before COVID, and then we digitized it. And we had I think we had 56 countries participating in that program. And that is really designed to not try and teach you how to be a better creative leader, because you're already fucking good, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to teach underrepresented talent to be better.
Yeah.
They're resilient, they're good, they're great.
Yeah.
So it was more about providing them the network and just tips and tricks and ways that they could support each other to kind of get through those barriers that they're going to face as they edge into leadership. But it was very much based around practical skills, like negotiation training, for example. At a Rare Academy, we would bring in an industry professional, so the faculty director of the Berlin School, David Slocum, who'd run all of our leaders through negotiation training. Then we'd bring in 50 CEOs or ECDs, and you'd have to negotiate a specific request. So whether it's pay rise, it might be negotiating a shared working role, it might be extended mat leave, and you sat there with physical leaders and practiced those skills that might be relevant to you in the future. So it's rare, so that was a lot.
You've touched on retention, and both of you touched on women leadership. What do you think? Because from my part of the world, Asia, the number one barrier to this would be motherhood. You know, when you have children, they get like, it's too much for them to push themselves towards their dream of, let's say, being on top of a company or whatever. What have you seen? What is the top barrier, you think?
Okay. First, I have to say that we should work together.
Yes.
So,
I told you we'd be friends.
Yeah, we should work together.
Yeah.
And I have like interesting data for you. We have a platform that maps creative talent, and we have more than 5,000 names in Brazil, and we're going to launch internationally this year.
Yeah.
But we have a gap between the junior roles and the leadership roles that start with ACD, 72% less in the leadership. So we lost a lot of women in this.
I know, that's why I'm trying to find out.
I've got some data.
So what was that barrier that you think
it's the same.
takes them away?
It's the same?
Yes. What's really concerning is we have 50% of females graduating out of creative degrees.
Yeah.
Right? But then when you look at the statistics, I took 5 years of D&AD award entrant data and I cross-referenced it with a naming API of over 1.2 million names from 280 countries, and I could tell the gender of each entrant with 98% accuracy. So what I was able to do with that is try and prove the hypothesis that when you have gender diversity in a core creative team, you're more likely to win a D&AD award. I feel bad talking about D&AD awards at Liz, but I did speak to Barbara years ago about Liz participating too, so we can do this with Liz. Award data next year. And in fact, you're 13% more likely to move from shortlist to a pencil, and you're 3% more likely to win a black pencil when you have gender diversity. So female-female teams don't outperform male-male teams or vice versa. It's male-female, so it's 2 people that have walked through the world completely different. So that's interesting, right? When you think about how do you put your teams together. Massive tangent, but what I was also able to do with that data is look at where females are sitting. Like down to city, down to agency.
Yeah.
I can tell you exactly what females are responsible for what piece of work. This is like a database, a recruiter's dream, right? I can tell you, how many women are sitting in CCO positions, ACD positions. I can tell you down to like department, producer. Like, it's amazing. So we built a data explorer to be able to mine this. So to your point, you've got 9% of female CCOs, 14% creative director, 18% ACDs. And then after that, there's this massive gap, right?
Yeah.
We are losing women in leadership.
Yeah.
Apologise for speaking about gender only in binary terms, but unfortunately it is the easiest thing for us to measure out of all of the underrepresented groups.
Okay,
You know?
we can go on and on this subject, and I want this
Yeah.
whole podcast to be about this subject. But let's
Yeah.
now move on.
All of our male listeners, all of our male
I'm
listeners
off
have been
tangent so long. Okay, let's start with pharma and medical jury. Okay, let's
Okay.
go back to now the other side of us. Why
Yes.
we're here.
Well, yes.
Okay, so the pharma and medical jury recognizes, this is the definition of your category anyways, creative excellence in the pharma and medical industry, specifically where the focus is on conditions and diseases that require prescription medication, a doctor's recommendation as part of the treatment. That's a very broad category. I mean, you're used to it, I'm sure, coming from health. But to many people, that's a lot of information to digest, right? When you look at the work, how important is the way you communicate these things?
Not talking about specific about pieces of the show this year, but one of the biggest problem healthcare, it's communication.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that can read the prescriptions. They can understand what the doctor says. So health literacy, it's something that's
Health literacy.
very important. So our job is very important. So it's not only to doing campaigns for the drugs, but also to make patients understand what they need to find the better person when you're talking about health. So a lot of work we see this year, it's about this, how we can make people have all the information they need to get a better health.
Any kind of work that stands out?
Yeah, the two categories that I felt that was nicer this year, the films.
Okay.
The films that is talking about caregivers and make people realize how hard it is to be a caregiver.
Well,
And
that's
the
true.
other category, it's innovation. Pharma is all about innovation, When you're thinking about that disease, you're trying to go so empathic with the patients that we looking for solutions to make their suffer less. There's one piece I really like, the menstruation cup. Then you turn this menstruation cup in laboratory materials so we can find more people to have cells to help. I don't know exactly the name of the conditions, but you find more people that are donors.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That is cool.
They're very cool to do something that you make another people's life
Sustainable.
better.
Yeah. Okay. Any trends you've seen so far in pharma?
Especially trying to make doctors more human.
Well, yeah, because it's so scientific. It
Yes.
can be cold, right?
Yes.
When it comes to medical. What is the kind of work that you're keen to bring home to your team? You want to show your team back home, oh, look what I've seen.
I show everything.
Show everything. Anything.
Everything, but you should use the films more to trying to explain very difficult environment. For example, there was a film that I love that it's make doctors understand their practice are very old. So they did a very epic film to say you're kind of old. You have to use new techniques. So you never thought about film to do that. We're going to do papers or something like that. Why don't you do a very epic film to show doctors that you're doing something very old?
Thank you, Laura. Now let's move on to Tara on the other side about digital and social media and influencers altogether as a category. When you're assessing work that features both celebrities, usually in the traditional sense, those are people working in movies, etc., and social media influencers who actually work their way up through YouTube, TikTok, etc. Anything that are different in the way their output would be?
Yeah, I think influencers who are native or born through platforms are incredibly good at knowing how to use the platform and to highlight its strength, right? So TikTok, for example, the most popular category on TikTok is comedy. So if you're working with YouTubers or TikTok influencers, you'll notice that they know how to design creative for platform really, really easily. And what's really nice as a creative director in ECD about doing that, so recently, before I left Google, we did a social campaign for Year in Search for Google. It was the most successful social campaign that Google had ever run, and our first major TikTok campaign. And it was an absolute joy working with influencers from all sorts of markets, from Japan to Philippines, because they just knew how to do social. So the actual creative direction input is not as heavy-handed, should I say? Is it a weird term? Whereas if you're working with people who come from more traditional film backgrounds or are celebrities, I think there's a lot of celebrities and influencers now that are starting to upskill themselves and build their media platform. So I think they can translate, but I think it's different. It's more on the creative to have to lead them to learn.
Are you on TikTok? I just want to check it out.
TikTok tried to hire me a couple of years ago. So I downloaded TikTok, for the interview.
Laura has TikTok.
I have TikTok.
I want to see your TikTok.
Anyway, but so I downloaded it because I was interviewing with them, and then I deleted it after the interview. It's not my preferred platform.
Okay, it's not your preferred. Okay. Yeah. So now let's talk about any trends that you've been seeing or what really works. Well, you explain a little bit more that they're different in terms of when you use each platform, right? But for example, in specific platforms, what really works well? Like I interviewed one YouTube star. She was just cooking and cooking. I don't see any difference between what she does on TikTok and on her YouTube. And then she told me, no.
Yeah. And
I spend hours different things, the way I do my ingredients. I went, of course, and then I learned that.
I think advertisers look at social media platforms too much by their platform name. So they're like, this is for TikTok, this is for YouTube, this is for this. And what we need to start doing is looking at social as surfaces, right? Because what you make on TikTok is the same as YouTube Shorts. It's the same as Reels. It's all the same format, right?
Yeah.
And yes, there are certain things you should customize when they go off to those platforms. But I often have a lot of content clients coming to me and saying, we just can't sell in the TikToks to their management team. And it's like, well, that's because you're describing a platform that's most foreign to them, they don't understand. So when you start to look at your content strategy, I think we need to just strip out the brands, become agnostic, and talk about surfaces. And I think we'll have more success. Yeah.
Okay, you've seen everything, I'm sure, what's online, on social media, but what do you want to see less of?
Beauty filters.
Yeah. Perfection.
Right? Like, I hate it. It's giving such an unrealistic, it's the most damaging thing we could possibly be doing for people. And I know it's different and different cultures enjoy it for different reasons, but I just think it should be banned.
Especially for teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And fake news. You have to say like fake news, like influencers saying things that are not true. It's hard.
There should be like something that, put in there for safety for everyone to see. Are you happy with the level of daring and creativity in this digital and social space right now? I mean, because there are daring ones. Are you happy with the courage people are taking, the risks people take?
I think we can do better on social. I think we see all of these amazing creative ideas and thoughts in other categories, and then I feel like often at agencies, social's kind of left as the last thing that gets recut and repurposed, and we're not leading with social. And for me, social is not the future, it's now, and it will be called something else, and agencies need to start thinking social first. Otherwise, in 10 years, they're not going to be relevant. My last manager said to me about 5 years ago, she's like, Tara, I want you to start investing in social and leading social work and upskilling it, because I want your career to be future-proof. I'm so thankful she did that for me. And that's where I really started to get interested in doing more work in this space. So,
yes. Yeah. Any last few words? A message to all our listeners about your life in pharma and medical and in social influencers, and at the same time your life as passionate for more girls and for rare, for diversity.
My message for privileged people, like, be responsible. Like, be a transformator, not someone that's learning about diversity all the time. Do something. You have, like, the power to do something.
That was strong. So I'm going to go back to work because I feel like Laura covered the change the world part. I think for us to get to better work on social, I would encourage agencies and brands to look at when they have their own brand personality in the real world. Be braver when it comes to social and give your brand an entirely new personality. And it can be funnier, it can be riskier, because both personalities need to be different and tweaked for them to be successful on those platforms. So that would be my message to creatives and marketers.
Thank you very much. Those are very nice answers. I mean, very insightful ones, considering we're in Vegas.
Thank you, Merlee, for having us and introducing me to my new best friend, Laura.
Yeah, exactly. Thank
Now
you
we
for
brought
this connection.
people together, right?
Like, thank you for inviting us.
Tara McKenty is a Chief Innovation Officer and a Co-Executive Creative Director at BMF in Sydney, and Laura Florence is the Executive Creative Director for Havas Health and You in Sao Paulo. They're both judges in the 2023 London International Awards. I'm Merlee Jayme, Chair Mom and founder of the Misfits Camp in Manila, and I'm one of your hosts for the podcast created for creatives. The producer is Sarah Knights. The theme music is by Brian Yassian of Yassian Music. The manager is Larissa Levy from the London International Awards. This podcast is an Eardrum production.